Go ahead. Okay, it's the second Zoom.
It's working at least. In this.
So the major differences between the wording of the first Luchos Rishonos, first tablets, and the Luchos Shnios, the second tablets, occurs in the first tablets. Yom Hashvi Shabbos Lashem Lokecho Osase Kol Locho, etc. In the second tablets, it doesn't say Zocher es Yom HaShabbos. It says Shomer es Yom HaShabbos Mekadsham. And then the rest of the paragraph is also different. Avdecha v'amoscha v'emtecha Hashem b'sharecha. So we have the famous medrash that Zocher v'shomer b'dibur echad nemru. Something that the human mind and human tongue cannot do, to pronounce two words simultaneously, and that the human ear cannot absorb to hear two words simultaneously. Shreikole lo mishtame, the Gemara says, cannot hear two different words at the same time. But by the Luchos, it happened between Zocher and Shomer. That's a very famous medrash. Rashi quotes it, and it's made even more famous by the fact that it is part of the verses of the Chododi that we use to welcome the Shabbos. So there we say, Shomer v'zocher b'dibur echad nem. Once had a discussion with Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, Zecher Tzadik L'Bracha. What did it say on the Luchos? That it says Zocher and Shomer. It could be that it was pronounced, the Medrash said, simultaneously. But if you looked at the Luchos, what did it say? Did it say Zocher? Did it say Shomer? And he was of the opinion that it said Shomer, Yom HaShabbos L'Kadsham. Because of what we say in Musaf, I'm sorry, in Shacharis on Shabbos, Shmiras Shabbos Kosu B'Sorah Secha. And Shabbos is written in your Torah, the Chein Kosu, and so it is written, V'Shomru B'nei Yisrael HaShabbos. So he was of the opinion that on the Luchos V'Shomru was written, and not the Zochru. Now we all know there's a great difference between Zochru and Shomru. Zocher is Yom HaShabbos L'Kadsham, remember Shabbos. Well, there are all sorts of mechanisms that aid our memory. So, for instance, every day we say, Yom Rishon L'Shabbos, Yom Sheni L'Shabbos. We remember Shabbos every day. So therefore, we fulfill the idea of Zocher. But the idea of Shomer, the observance of Shabbos with all of its rules and mitzvot and restrictions, is a different matter completely. 39 malachos. Every malacha has its own subsection, tolodos. Then on top of it, there are 7 midrabanan. On top of that, there are customs. So Shomor is a very heavy burden, whereas Zochor, on the surface at least, it seems sufficient just to pay it a little more than lip service. I remember Shabbos. And all of the Meforshim deal with this. Why did Torah frame it this way? Why didn't the Torah just say straight, Shomor, Shabbos, L'Kachim? Because if it's the moment it's Shomor, it's Zochor as well. I observe Shabbos by not doing this malacha or by performing this mitzvah of Kiddush, etc. So not only do I observe Shomor, Shabbos, L'Kachim, I automatically observe also Zochor, Shabbos, L'Kachim. I remembered Shabbos. So therefore, the Meforshim devoted a great deal of thought to the concept of Zochor, remembering Shabbos. And basically, they say that this mitzvah of remembering Shabbos is a mitzvah during the weekday, not during Shabbos itself. Shabbos, we have Shomor. In the 6 days of the week, we have Zochor. The Meforshim say that without the 6 days of the week of Zochor, Shomor can never be accomplished. Because you cannot, so to speak, turn Shabbos on and off, and that's it. So therefore, we have, for instance, a custom called Kabbalat Shabbat. We have 6 chapters of Tehillim that we recite that are not part of the prayer service, but nevertheless are recited universally amongst the Jewish people to welcome the Shabbos. The Shabbos becomes a living entity, not just a day in the week. So in the Chododi, it becomes our Kala. In other verses, it becomes our queen. But Shabbos is a living entity. It's not just a day. And that requires, therefore, preparation. Like if you're going to have guests come to your house, so you get ready for the guest. That's understood. Well, if Shabbos is coming to your house, you get ready for Shabbos. Where is the maximum getting ready for Shabbos? So the Meforshim say it begins on Wednesday. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday belong to the next Shabbos. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday still belong to the previous Shabbos. So there are many famous stories that exist about preparing for the Shabbos. There's the famous story of Reb Tzadok HaKohen de Lublin. So Reb Tzadok fortunately had a very bitter and unhappy marriage with his first wife. And she would not accept a divorce from him. And so he attempted to obtain had their mayor Rabbonim, 100 rabbis, that would allow him to, so to speak, commit polygamy, to marry another woman as well. And he traveled throughout Poland and Belarus and Lithuania to gather the signatures of the 100 rabbis. The tzaddik was not from a Hasidic family. Nevertheless, he ended up Thursday by Mordechai Yosef Weiner, the founder of the Rav Ziner Hasidus, who was a Talmud of the Kotzker. And he asked him for his signature. And the Rebbe said to him, "It's Thursday. It's too close to Shabbos. I can't sign anymore. Just wait till Sunday, then I'll sign it for you." And he waited over the weekend, and the Rebbe made him a chassid. But there were people that they didn't write anymore on Thursday because it was too close to Shabbos. I heard from Rabbi Yaakov many times that he said that in America, somehow we barely saved the Shabbos. He said, but we lost the Erev Shabbos completely. There's no Erev Shabbos because everybody is still on the highway 2 hours before candle lighting. The Erev Shabbos is that people didn't go anywhere Friday. Here in Israel, Friday's somewhat of a day off to get ready for Shabbos. Can't just plunge into it. So therefore, that's why it said Shomor. Because Zohar, he said, was a mitzvah for all week. A mitzvah for all the other times. When there is no Shomor, you're allowed to turn on the lights. You're allowed to drive. You're allowed to do everything. But there's a mitzvah that even then you have to remember Shabbos. And that's the preservation of the Shabbos, he said. Is the schira, the remembrance of Shabbos, is the preservation of Shabbos. He used to complain often. I heard it from him. He said, in America, they're not Mechalei Shabbos. They don't desecrate the Shabbos. They don't know the Shabbos exists. You know what you're talking about. One of the great advantages here in Israel is that no matter what the situation is, etc., Israelis know when Shabbos exists. They know that there's such a thing as Shabbos. So there's a chance. As long as there's Zohar, there's a chance for Shomor. But when there's no Zohar, so then Shomor becomes almost an impossibility. There's no way to reach it. Another major discrepancy that the second luchos have that doesn't appear in the first luchos is regarding the commandment of lo sachmod, not to covet, not to desire things that are not mine. Another man's spouse, another man's house, another man's business, another man's automobile. So sometimes we do so ruefully. The famous incident that Rabbi Yitzhak Blaser and Yitzhak Petterberger was walking with his Rebbe, with Rabbi Shor Salanter on the street, and a rich Jewish aristocrat rode by in a carriage with 4 horses and footmen. So Rabbi Yitzhak aside, and he said to Rabbi Yisrael, look at this man's Olam Hazeh. And Rabbi Yisrael said, no, you make a mistake, that's his Olam Haba. There's nothing left after this. Because if that's what we concentrate on, then there is nothing left after that. So in the Luchas Shniyos, it said, Lo sisaveh. You should not have a taiva. Should not have an appetite for it. So it's interesting, there are foods that we have an appetite for and foods that we don't have an appetite for. For the first 21 years of my life, I never ate liver. My mother tried to get it into me every way possible. For many years, I thought turkey was liver. I didn't like it, couldn't eat it. I became engaged. The first Shabbos, I'm eating my future mother-in-law, and she served liver. And I darn well ate it. So there are certain foods that, you know, as we like or we don't like. We favor, we don't favor. So I don't have a taiva for food that I don't like. It doesn't in any way affect me. But I do have an appetite for food that I do like. So when the Torah says, Lo sisaveh, the Torah wants that you should convert your appetite, that if it belongs to somebody else, you don't like it. You're not drawn to it. It's not sufficient, Lo sachmo, that you don't covet it. Because the Gemara will say that they wouldn't, by ending up coveting it, you ended up stealing it, taking it. In fact, the Gemara says that that's the only way to be over on Lo sachmo, is that when you steal it, so then both violations come into play. You stole it and you desired it. So, for instance, in our world, the idea of advertising is based simply on the fact that if you see something, you're going to want it. It's going to be attractive. And if it's not attractive in itself, then you have the presenter being an attractive person. And if that's not enough, then you have social pressure that makes it attractive. Status that makes it attractive. I remember when I was working for a law firm in Chicago, and I had to decide whether I'd stay with the firm and try to become a partner or go out on my own. So the senior partner in the firm, who was a very fine man, said to me, if you want to be a partner in this firm, you have to drive at least an Oldsmobile. There was a time that an Oldsmobile was a big car in America. So he said, if you want to be a member of a prestigious law firm, so you have to drive that kind of a car. I was driving a Chevrolet or a Ford, I don't remember. So, like it's not enough. People will see you get out of the Chevrolet, they'll say, what kind of law firm does he represent? So you got to drive an Oldsmobile. The fact I couldn't afford an Oldsmobile made no difference. And the fact that he wasn't going to buy me the Oldsmobile also made no difference. But there is such a concept that people have. That material things give us status. Something that gives us status is attractive to us. And therefore, the Torah warns us about it. There are ideas that are current in the society today that even the people who advance those ideas know that they are not true and they're not valuable. And in fact, that they're dangerous and harmful. But nevertheless, I will advance those ideas because it gives me status. Somebody came to me this week and he said, Rabbi, how come you don't have a Twitter account? I said, why do I need a Twitter account? He said, people want to talk to you. They want. I said, all my life, people who have wanted to talk to me somehow have gotten hold of me to talk to me. So he said, like he said it in the Yiddish, he said, it's passionate. It's not nice that you don't have a Twitter account. So I think he's crazy, but he thinks I'm crazy. But that's tava. Tava is desire to have something that you don't need or you don't want, but something drives you to have it. And that's what Chava said in Bariyeh Sadas. Tava ileinayim. She didn't need it. There was no necessity for it. You have everything we call Eitzagan Ochel Tochal. You got everything that you need. And you have eternal life, and what do you need the complication for? We see it amongst all of our politicians. I mean, if Biden wouldn't have run for president, nobody would be bothering him the fact that he's a Ghanaian. It's okay to, but if you want it, so everything that you want comes at a cost. And oftentimes the cost is unimaginable. No one thought what it would be. So the Torah said it both ways. Said it lo sachmod on things that you see, things that are present. You see the other man's spouse. You see the other man's auto. You see the other man's house. You see everything that he has. Well, tisava is taiva, even for the things that you don't see, the status the other person has, the money you think he has, the position you think he occupies. I knew a young man that from the first day on, his aspiration was to become the president of a certain organization, which I will not identify. And he worked on it. And eventually he became secretary there, and he was elected assistant vice president, and then eventually he became the president. So he invested 12 years in the organization, and now he could be called the president of. And in a moment of candor, he said to me, it was not worth it. I said, why isn't it worth it? He says, because next year there's someone else going to have it. Next year is going to be a different president. That's what drives us. So the Torah therefore wanted to frame it in as many ways possible that we should be aware of it. So even though Lo Sachmod and Lo Sisave do not have, so to speak, a practical outcome in halacha, because you cannot violate it unless you actually do something. But you're never punished for thought. So, gee, I would like to have your time, but I didn't do anything about it. But that leads to a certain attitude in life where eventually I can say to myself, well, I can certainly take his car because I am more entitled to it than he is. And it is that focus on life that the Torah came to impress upon us, and that the Luchos Shnios expand therefore the ideas that appear in the Luchos Rishonos. They're like a commentary to the Luchos Rishonos. They're like a Torah Shabbal Peh written down to explain the Luchos Rishonos. They become the basis for our Yirah Shamayim and for all of civilization. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. A wonderful Shabbos Nachamu. Stay cool. You're okay. I'm fine.